It makes me think of the Etruscan sarcophagus figures. There's some kind of no holds barred real lifeness about them, as unlifelike as they are. They kind of sprawl, making themselves comfortable, and don't care what we think. And yet the horizontality, the landscapeness, the sort of the complete capitulation of gravity is serious. But overall, I saw this stuff 20 years ago, and it strikes me now how jocular it is.
How?
Jocular. In this very dry, pessimistic way. Pessimistic and sardonic. It's just not quite bitter, really.
It seems dull to me.
Dull?
Dull and dulling.
It's deliberate. I think it's his temperament, but it's also this kind of skepticism. Far beyond Charles Ray.
There's no comparison. But that relationship between this base and the figure, seems to me to be so, I don't know what word to put to it, but it
Dull is pretty good.
Dull. And overall, the sense I have is that one is engaged by surface. The forms in general are quite ordinary, familiar. It's you're perceiving them through this surface that is, quite vigorously kind of articulated, but not articulated necessarily in terms of making the form, but somehow or other for its own sake. There doesn't seem to me to be a relationship between them. Just that, clearly, there is in places, but overall, I feel that I'm invited to be engaged by, the way the material is handled and the pleasure that is taken in that, more than by what it is that's being made with it.
It's especially in the figures. There's this sort of sweet cuddliness. With some of the heads, there's more of a sense of looking for some kind of expression that.
Whether that's on the part of the maker or on the part of the viewer, I'm not sure.
Well, I give him. Yeah. I think it's the maker. He's not. He's tentative and certainly not that daring, but there is something is happening. Even in the heads and in the figures, that isn't happening.
But it's so. What's the word? It happens when you're dealing with. We've been through this, Jock. When you're dealing with faces, it happens. You don't have to do much for it to happen, for something to appear that is,
Well, but it's. But that's what that's part of making a head, and looking for it. I sort of not happening there. It's happening a little more here. The disruption of everything is beginning to get kind of interesting. It doesn't locked together very effectively, but it's
It's a monolith, Jock. How can it not lock together?
well, this is
I mean, he barely allows a facial feature.
sorry.
He barely allows a facial feature at all.
But the mouth and the teeth are jumping right at that. It's
It's like expressed in scale. The nose is like vastly under scale, and that little mouth. That's kind of a thing of his, the tiny mouth. Always gets a little cute sometimes.
yeah. Well, that's he has a weakness for that cuteness, but
I think formally it's unassailable. I mean, it's a mass. It just doesn't let you argue. There's no disputing. You know, I mean, there's very little projection, very little. You know, modeling beyond a kind of primary plane. You know, I mean, that undercut's really slight, and the pronunciation of the chin, you know, doesn't come much out of the mass.
it
It's
doesn't
really
come.
stubborn, insistent that way.
Sorry.
It's really stubborn, insistent that way.
Well, or lazy.
No.
Lazy, did you say?
Yeah.
Lazy, yes. That feels a good word to me. Although this is the piece that interested me most when I first encountered it. I mean, partly just because the overall form seemed to build something that I was not expecting and couldn't quite figure out to begin with. But now it's not continued to engage me.
I see him as kind of Diogenes figure.
Sorry.
This kind of Diogenes figure.
Yeah.
Unpleasant, abrupt, a bit abrasive, hugely stubborn, unforgiving, accusatory, moral, all about truth and realism and, you know.
Well, it's pretentious. It's pretentious.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's like the least pretentious philosophical position there is.
but the work is pretentious.
Yeah, that exactly. Yeah. And
It's pretending to some kind, it's claiming some kind of gravity, some kind of you know, weight of
I see it as satirical.
emotional
yeah.
substance that I don't find it actually contains.
I see a kind of satire that's taking the gravitas away from everything around him, even the past. Because he's making a point of...
You think he actually is cynical and these things are
Not
made?
cynical, but he's one of these guys who like just tasted the worst of the 20th century. You know, Marini less so. Marini kind of saw it, but this guy was just... I mean, he was a displaced person. He was a refugee. He was unwanted. He was like an orphan. He was, you know, kicked out of Germany, unwelcome in Switzerland, living in shelters, as I recall. You know, just the...
Yeah. It's a good story, but he
But it's real, Jock. He lived that.
well,
To be unwelcome in Switzerland is like really
yeah,
unpleasant.
yeah, but it's is all of that stuff in the work.
I think so, yeah.
But you said satire, and what I've been thinking is there's no irony in these things. That's a dimension that we're sort of familiar with, and it has an appeal because there's no irony. But you got to be careful about that kind of.
But I think this, I mean,
No,
I look at this, I can't help but remember portrait bust of the Roman Emperor
I don't think you're right. I think he's claiming this tragic, story.
Mm-hmm.
He's making a claim about it.
That doesn't feel sincere.
But I don't feel it. Like he knows the story and he's putting it out there and he knows how to do it. But it's superficial. Because like I said, it's so much about the surface.
I agree with the superficiality in a way, because there's like things that he's not interested in, he doesn't care to go to or try, and it's as if they don't exist. So he's really somewhere he comes from and he means to be, and it reminds me of what somebody said about Domye. It's like, they said it's as if he never saw a pretty girl in his life.
Yeah, but Domye was an artist, or he got himself into his drawings, paintings, and sculptures. Just automatically, just fall out of his hands.
There is something inartistic about this.
Inartistic?
Yeah. But it's either embraced or innate or deliberate.
What do you mean by inartistic?
Bad art is
No, it's like you have a spectrum in front of you and you decide to take one color. You refuse to, modulate or articulate. You refuse to give Grant any pleasure.
But we've all lived through that bad art routine, and it was sort of full of irony. And this is sort of bypassing that experience.
I don't think I can agree about that ironic part, because I look at this, it's a monumental classical head, strong echoes of emperor portraits, and it's like this ugly lumpen mute thing that just seems to say, you want art, you want statuary, here, take your fucking statuary. Modern world. Oh, you think you can go back? You think that there's something better in life? Take a look at this. Stick it in your, If it weren't so matter of fact, it would be just like unbearably sardonic. But he plods and this sort of like step by step kind of reduces the tension. There's another bounce for his Guston, like Guston. Those heads, it's just like a mouth and a cigarette.
Well,
It's like an ugly fact of life, and he won't look at anything else.
well, Guston is another guy that kind of doesn't stand up for, you know, the sort of hero worship that he's getting is off-putting to me. But you know, if we're thinking about, you know, pulling names out of the air, what about Tucker? What about Landon Lehrman? Just to, you know, be studio school.
Well, it's interesting against Tucker because that like brings out the satire issue. Because Josephson's specific enough about a few features and a format that you can't take it as a kind of universal notion of head or skull or something. It's like, you know it's a face, you know it can see you. And it knows it's not pretty. And that you wish it were. But with Tucker, that's not where he's at, you know? There's no satiric or ironic quality in Tucker's work, right?
No.
I'm not sure there is in this. I mean, you think there is. I don't think there is. I think there's a kind of it's not satirical. It's not ironic. Sorry.
Yeah, if you make a head that big with a mouth that small, plunk in the middle of it.
Yeah, but there's another mouth.
It's like the throat in a balloon.
There's a kind of absence of something in this world, and I can't put my finger on it.
Plastic integrity.
Well, that's a kind of yes, absolutely. But it comes from there's an absence of tenderness.
Yeah.
That's what I'm missing. There's an absence of a kind of tenderness, a kind of care, a kind of love, you know?
The figures, it's overly loved. It's cuddly, sweet. It's.
It is.
Sorry.
It isn't.
Well, she's hugging herself.
But the object isn't made with any, you know, feeling for. You know what it is. The image is, you know, you can claim the image is an image of somebody that is, but really, no. I think that somewhere in there is what I'm missing, is some kind of.
Well, when you say love, then
Embrace.
Then you're getting at something, but it's only and you know, only sort of real artists get in with love and that full power or whatever, and it's sure missing here. But as I say, the sweetness and cuddliness is.
Yeah. It's like he's not totally present in the work somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think the central theme is rejection. He's this hugely rejected soul, and he's kind of taking a kind of revenge in his work, in rejecting so many things that other people want and value, maybe only habitually, you know, conventionally, in a cliche fashion. They say they love classicism, and then he says, "Oh, you love classicism? How about this? Try loving this."
That defiance. It's. I don't feel. He's more ingratiating.
Yeah. Yeah, the surfaces are ingratiating. The surfaces are, yeah. The concept of precision is totally missing, isn't it? It's always a matter of approximately, it seems to me. It's always a question of near enough, roundabout, somewhere, sort of, somewhat like. I'm done. Have we got some pictures?